Thanks. I'm Jennifer Brouhard. I am a retired OUSD teacher and District 2 School Board Director.
My name is Carroll Fife, and I am a retired wannabe teacher and the council member for Oakland's District 3.
All right. Good evening. My name is Brooklyn Williams, and I serve as Chief of Education and Community Safety for Mayor Tao.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rowena Brown. I currently serve as District Director to Assemblymember Bonta, and most recent law school grad who studied environmental law with a concentration in land use development.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. I'm Kyra Mungia. I started my career as an OUSD teacher, and I am co-founder of Trio Plus, where we aim to tackle housing and affordability for Oakland educators.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andreas Cluver. I'm Secretary Treasurer with the Alameda County Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent all the folks that are going to be building the housing. So glad to be here.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Bobby Lopez. I am a parent here in the district. I was a parent of, I'm currently a parent of a child in Claremont and Sankofa, and actually my children went to school here in this building. I'm not the only parent. I see Jana as well. And so this is a really big issue for us in terms of, looking at closed spaces and going through that process, but I'll talk about that later. And also I worked for a housing development organization for about 8 years.
Thanks, and I'll just also point out Preston Thomas, our Chief Systems and Services Officer for Oakland Unified, and Kenya Chapman, the Director of Facilities for Oakland Unified, and they're going to be helping with kind of Q&A at the end. For right now, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and trying to do both things at the same time. So I think the other thing to learn is that you need to have a Zoom master at the same time. So so just to start a little bit with gray boxes. So I think some of the need, so suddenly got volume. Okay, so this is Edward Chan's adult school, which is where I actually taught for many years. And so it's very personal to me. It's on Church Street across the street from Eastmont Mall. And it's been vacant now. It closed in 2011. It was really sad to be part of closing that school. Just to be one of the teachers at a school that's closed is like really, really hard. But it's been sitting vacant for 12 years. And so I think I don't have to wax eloquent about the need in Oakland right now, because we all feel it in our guts every time we pass by an encampment. Every time we talk to a teacher or a school employee who's barely scraping by, who's commuting from wherever out in the outer ring of the Bay Area to get here to serve our kids, or work in second jobs in order to be able to pay rent. And then we see these vacant properties that are just creating blight in our communities. And when they did the 7-Eleven committee, the neighbors actually said, like, please just do anything with it. Just stop leaving it just sitting there. And so, this is one of the sites. I think we have actually entered into a development agreement with a developer for this site a couple years ago, but it's still in progress. This is the 1025 2nd Avenue. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that later tonight, but that's also, since there was a flood, it's an old building, it's in bad shape. It's been sitting vacant again, 10 years, I think, at this point. And then this is right here in this neighborhood, Golden Gate Child Development Center. It was a preschool. It's right off of Herzog, so right off of Adeline and San Pablo. It's also been sitting vacant for about 11 years. And it's just sad because there was a charter school that was looking to develop it or convert it into a site for as part of UMing, but UMing has moved out of the neighborhood. And so there's now no plan for this location at all. And it's really too bad because it's an ideal site for either putting a preschool in again, but there's no Oakland Unified site anywhere near it. So that doesn't really make sense. Or else it would be great to see some housing there to serve the community, especially affordable housing or workforce housing that would help our educators. So I think as we look at these sites, each of them has their own history. And as I was joking at the beginning, we're talking a lot about occupied land, and we have to remember that Oakland is occupied land, right? That that while Oakland Unified is one of the biggest landowners in the city of Oakland, that's territory that was taken from Mexico. Before that was taken from the Ohlone people. And so we have to just think really carefully about what we want to use public land for. And I think what better use than to provide options, provide housing for, there's over 1,600 families, probably a lot more at this point in Oakland, unified families that don't have housing or are very risky shared housing or contingent housing. And there's so many educators that could also be provided support. So we just have to look at these properties and find better uses for them. So I'll pass it over to Director Brouhard to say her remarks.
Thanks. So housing is a priority for our unhoused students and families and educators. Unions like OEA and the building trades have pushed for us for years to use currently vacant and unused OUSD properties to build housing for unhoused students and families. Because educators, community activists, parents, elected officials, all of us sitting on this panel tonight, we know that students who are unhoused have lower academic success. We know that students who are unhoused have chronic absenteeism. And we know that students who are unhoused struggle significantly to complete work assigned outside of the classroom. And we know that many students who are unhoused face mental health and other health issues that affect their academic success. As one of the largest landowners in Alameda County, OUSD has land to develop housing, but we can't do this alone. We need to collaborate with state, county, and city to finance housing and to manage housing complexes once they're built. I'm really grateful for the support from our panelists tonight, all of whom have worked to provide housing for those who are unhoused and affordable housing for OUSD educators and staff who are dedicated to working with our students, but who often have to leave the district because of housing. And I think, again, as a teacher, having students who were unhoused just put them at just a huge disadvantage. And to see students who, when they were able to come to school, who didn't know where they were going to be that night or that day, when they came to school, they worked really hard, but it wasn't continuous enough to build that success. So I, again, am really appreciative of all the people who are sitting on this panel tonight to help bring housing to our students and families.
Sorry, for one thing I forgot to say is this is being recorded tonight and we're going to post it. So just if anybody's on Zoom who doesn't want their image taken, they should, hide their image. But yeah, we are planning to post this online so that people can catch it later if they want to. The next, I think we're now going to welcome Bobby Lopez, who's going to just put a framing question for us.
Hi, everybody. Bobby Lopez again, parent here in Santa Fe Golden Gate. Just to give a little bit more context, as I mentioned before, many parents in this neighborhood, some sitting in the audience, fought to keep the school alive. This was a very hard process. We tried incredibly hard. We were very happy eventually, while we were going through a painful merger, we were very happy that this was allocated for the use for SFUSD students with disabilities. So we are happy about that. And I believe that connects to our discussion here because it's really about community use for spaces that are vacant, whether that be using it for services that are needed or whether that's using it for housing. And Oakland has done a great job of building housing for people who are high earners, high income earners. I think we're over 200% of what we were supposed to build in the last 7 years. Whereas people, like people in the audience, I think, who make middle income wages, teachers, janitors, and people who don't have any income, we haven't gotten what we need. Only 40% of our low income housing was created in the last 7 years, and only 6% of our moderate income housing. So we have somewhat really failed to keep middle income families here in the city. And I know I feel that because so many of my son's friends leave. And that's very jarring for him. It's also jarring for those young people who grew up in Oakland for generations, who now find them in Antioch and Pinole and Bay Point and all the cities where they can actually afford housing. So now I'll get to the framing question. So I wanted just to contextualize this, and I'm really excited that this, Sam and Jennifer are, School Board Member Davis and School Board Member Brouhard have been working on this issue. I know that Sam and I spoke about it a long time ago. And so I'm really glad that this is happening because this is so important. we live by all these unused sites, these vacant sites. And so what I'd love to ask of the people on this panel is, in terms of what your office or what your department or what your city agency can do to really partner with Oakland Unified School District to realize that vision of housing for workers, housing for our families, housing for folks that are homeless families in particular. So that's my question to all of you.
Testing. I feel like you all have the best mics. I don't know what's going on here. But I want to first just start by saying the fact that we are all here talking about this issue, to me, really indicates how the city and the county, because we have a county representative here as well, and the school district are coming together to tackle one of Oakland's biggest issues. We've been hearing it for years. And before I was an elected official, I was working on issues around how do we house people who are living on the streets. The people who don't know me before Moms for Housing know that I was a director of a nonprofit, and primarily the work at the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment was to keep people housed so they don't end up on the streets. But now, as an elected official, and with the very public demonstration of our housing occupation in 2019, we've only seen the numbers of people living on Oakland streets increase. So we are in a crisis. We are in a crisis of affordability, but we are also in a crisis of morality, because the concept of housing and who deserves it it's fallen out of the intention of people being housed in the first place. Now it's treated as a commodity that's traded amongst some of the most wealthiest corporations around the world. Global financialization has created a situation where even small landowners are seeing themselves as a part of a bigger financial group that wants to get as much money as they possibly can by using housing as a commodity. So we're going backwards. And I will get to the question, Bobby, I'm probably going to have you restate it. But over the last several years, we've lost over 1,000 people in the city of Oakland who've died on the streets. And I know if you all live in the city, you've probably seen people on the streets as well. These people came from somewhere. And I know there are a lot of folks out there that are saying, it's the result of democratic policies or woke policies that have created homelessness and despair on our streets in the way that we see it. But it really is global financialization and the fact that we do not see housing as a human right. And during the 2019 occupation of the Magnolia House in West Oakland, we researched and did studies and talked to experts and found that there were 4 vacant units for every 1 unsheltered person. I don't know what those numbers are right now, but if we're in a housing crisis, as California is, we cannot allow that to happen. In my district, there are more homeless encampments than any other district in the city. And along with that comes illegal dumping. I've personally witnessed people bringing trucks of garbage and dumping them around tents. And we also have people who are living on the streets who need serious mental health care, who hoard things on the streets. And if we had full wraparound services, supportive housing for these populations, I'm not even talking about the wonderful reporting that Oakland side did for our young people. But if we had supportive services for these populations who are most deeply in need, we would decrease the amount of crime that's happening. I did an informational report that showed the city of Oakland spends minimum $75 million a year on addressing homelessness, and the problem is growing. Bobby, I'm going to pass the microphone down because I'm clearly taking too long. This is an issue that means a lot to me, but I want to make sure that the other panelists are having an opportunity to share as well.
Okay, I shall restate the question, which I believe, Councilmember, you answered in part. What is your office vision for building affordable housing, which you spoke to? And then how can you assist, or how can you partner with OUSD to realize the vision of more housing at the unused vacant sites?
One of the things that I've been talking to folks at OUSD about is partnering with the County of Alameda. Thankfully, I've been talking to Supervisor Carson about starting with the vacant parcels that the county has through the Chapter 8 program. And those are tax defaulted properties. And I've been working with the supervisor for the last 2 years on this process. And there are several tax defaulted properties that if they're over, I believe what the tax assessor said, that if they're over between 6 and 10 years defaulted, then they rarely recover those properties. And so if we start looking at the properties that are seriously delinquent, working with property owners to see if they can bring those houses back to the ownership of the initial owner, then that would be great. If they cannot, we have to use every single vacant parcel for housing. And that's housing for different populations. Our Tay youth, which is very near and dear to my heart, but also our senior citizens, our workforce, and the people who are commuting to come and work at the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda and the school district, to make sure that those critical populations are housed. And I think we can do that. My plan is to get the 5,000 people that are living on Oakland streets off the streets with a 5K plan. We can do it if we are serious and we're working together.
I guess I can go ahead and jump in, here on behalf of Assemblymember Bonta, who represents all of us, at the state level. It is her, desire to ensure that school districts have greater flexibility in the use of utilizing surplus land to support deeply affordable housing for educators, students, their families. And so that's why, I'll let the cat out of the bag. Our team has been working on, we're probably in our third or fourth conversation along with Director Davis on legislation to really help eliminate a lot of the red tape that goes into such developments. Ultimately, as was mentioned, school districts end up being the largest kind of landowner in a city. And with that, of course, they aren't housing developers. And so some support, is definitely needed. I think about all of the work that has gone into the actual development of the site that was mentioned first, the Edward Shands building. Prior to working on behalf of Assemblymember Bonta, I was working for the city of Oakland and really, watched that project go through multiple kind of iterations over a very long time, and that here still in 2023, that property is still working to be developed. So our goal in the legislation is to really help to streamline the process. There's also going to be a funding component to it to really ensure that school districts can develop out and use this land. And so that's kind of what I wanted to highlight. Did you want to add some more, Kyra?
Oh, Brooklyn, you want to go first?
I mean, if it's threaded, go ahead.
It's threaded a bit and separate. I'll just start. So as I shared in my intro, I started my career out teaching here in Oakland. This work is deeply personal to me. I struggled to get by on $43,000 a year, and I have deep respect for all of our teachers who do this work day in and day out for our kids, for our communities. While salary has of course gone up, it has not gotten to the point where our educators are able to live here affordably. I'll just throw out some stats. 60% of Oakland teachers are rent burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on rent. And teachers of color are disproportionately represented in the group that pays more than 50% of their income on rent. We know that this is cycles of kind of intergenerational systems of oppression at play here. And almost half of OUSD teachers leave by year 3. The number one cited reason for why teachers leave is because they can't afford to live here. This impacts our education system, our kids, and ultimately our community as a whole. At Trio Plus, we believe that all educators should at a minimum be able to afford to live here, and at best be able to thrive in the city that they teach. And that's really our goal. I also want to be clear that this is in no way in support of doing this in lieu of educator pay raises. We know that that is also important too. Right now at Trio Plus, we offer a number of services to get at housing and affordability for our Oakland educators. We have an online marketplace where we negotiate discounted rent with housing providers for all OUSD employees to access. We offer kind of additional services to get at the barriers and friction points that our educators are experiencing, such as we co-sign leases. We guarantee leases for educators whose credit scores are too low. Again, predominantly our Black and Brown teachers. We're right now piloting a $0 security deposit program, trying to get at some of those upfront cost barriers for our educators. And kind of financial coaching and wellness so that we can help those educators raise their credit, know how to kind of really take advantage of the salary that they do have. And while we do not build workforce housing ourselves, we recognize that we are in a unique position to support the district in thinking about how we approach this, given kind of our supportive ecosystem of educators trying to get housing. And we've been honored to be partnering with Assemblymember Bonta and Rowena and the whole office around, and Director Davis and Brouhard as well, around exploring what kind of legislative opportunities might exist so that really we can see this play out, just as Director Davis said, to support our educators to be able to affordably live here.
All right. So I guess that brings me up. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Brooklyn Williams. I serve as Chief of Education and Community Safety for Mayor Tao. And affordable housing is definitely one of the top priorities, safety and housing, and those things go together. And I'm proud of our city for passing a budget that allocated the most money towards building affordable housing in the history of our city. So it's definitely something that's a priority for the administration, and I think for everyone. I'm here tonight to talk about a specific project that we're working on in partnership with OUSD at 1025 2nd Avenue is a picture that Director Davis put up earlier. And, you know, before I decided to join this administration to take this job, there were some real conversations about priorities. And I have been a member of a coalition. It's called the Coalition for the CTE Hub at 1025 2nd Avenue for some years now. And before I decided to join Mayor Tao's administration, I wanted to make sure that this project was just as important to her as it was to us. She was a champion of ours while she was on the council and wanted to make sure that that was going to carry over into the mayor's office. And so she agreed. And that was probably one of the easiest things we discussed in whether I would join. And so this project is considered a legacy project for this administration. I'm here to get this across the finish line. And it's not just about this one project. I'm very proud of our city and the story of this project. I think that it's the way that this project has come to be and will ultimately come to be can be a model, not just for OUSD, but for our nation, honestly. So we're talking about housing, and we know that that's the foundation for everything, right? You can't have safety, you can't have anything without housing. And so the relationship between housing and safety is very much front and center when it comes to this project. Young men who were detained in Camp Sweeney, which is our detention camp here in Alameda County. In 2017, we had a conversation. I was running a program called Freedom School at Camp Sweeney. Shout out to Freedom School. Just want to say Lincoln families, yes. Children's Defense Fund. And so we were there working with these young men, and we talked about the recidivism rate. So for those of you who don't know what recidivism is, it's basically the chance that you're going to go back and reoffend and be in detention again. And those young people are facing a 72% chance within 2 years that they will be back in detention. That is a failure of our system. It is a system that does not work. And we asked them their thoughts on it. And they basically came up with this vision for what they need to overcome those overwhelming odds. And what they said is they need housing. They need career technical education or career pipeline experiences and wraparound supports all in one location. They don't need to have to run around the county to get their needs met. They don't need to fall into the traps that so many young people do by not lowering the barriers to accessing what they need. And so that was in 2017. In terms of this particular property, and I'm very proud of those young men. Unfortunately, some of them are in Rita right now. We didn't have this hub for them, and they did not beat those odds. And those are the young people that I think about every morning and every night when we get up to do this work. And so, but with this property, you know, I was serving as expanded learning director at Dewey Academy, which is directly across the street. And, you know, the board at the time had made a decision that the 1025 had flooded, and they were exploring selling both properties to market rate developers for luxury condos at that time. we had some feelings about that, obviously, as a school community, and we organized and we socialized the board about the issue. And I'm proud to say that the district did a 180 and not only decided not to build luxury condos at that location, but decided to partner with us to put the most underserved, marginalized group of people in our city on this property and to work with us to make that happen. And I think that's significant. I think that's the type of paradigm shift we're going to need to move the dial, not just in our city, but in our society. And so I'm really proud of the leadership on the board right now, currently, who mostly are in support, and also the administration, the central office administration, the superintendent on down is super supportive of this. And what I want to say is, for any project that involves serving the community using district land, I think it's really, really important to start with the community. I think that those ideas and those solutions should be extracted from the ground up. Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I think that is why we're betting everything on this project, because it came from the very young people that it's going to serve. And we've been able, I want to shout out some of our funders. Zellerbach Family Foundation was one of our first funders to believe in this project. Stumsky has been really supportive in the RM Low Foundation. And that money is used to hire young people. So we have a design team of peer youth specialists who are 16 to 24 years old, and they are at the center of the design of this project, and they're getting paid to do that. They're getting paid to engage even more young people. So, you know, you can have your core team, but they did a survey of over 300 youth in Oakland, ages 16 to 24, to figure out exactly what the needs are. Not so it went beyond the young men that were detained. And so that's quality control. So whatever we do, our take on it is that we should be involving the community at every single layer of the process. And I have found this city and the elected leaders, whether they're on the council, whether they're on the school board, to be very aligned with that and receptive to that. And for that, I'm grateful, because I don't take that for granted. I think there's a lot of people who feel like young people in particular don't know what they're talking about, right? Or community members don't know, right? And that it's up to the experts with degrees and credentials. And the reality is we need all of that. We need a partner, and everyone plays their role. And that's why our coalition calls ourselves the Avengers, because we all have our own superpowers as a partnership between the city, the district, the county, some state involvement and state support. I also want to thank superintendent of our state, Tony Thurman, who partnered with us back in 2017 and turned the boys' vision, the young men's vision, into a bill, which went to the state, and they went to Sacramento and presented their vision. And so there's been support up and down. And I really am looking forward to, like I said, not just when we break ground and do a ribbon cutting, but also this process. I think it's really, really important to be very intentional about your process so that we can all have the outcomes that we're looking for. And I'll stop, because Director Davis knows I'll go on for another hour and a half. So I'm gonna pass it to you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting labor to the table. Normally, we have to kind of muscle our way into the debate, so I was really very happy to be invited to get labor's perspective on workforce housing and partnering with the school district. I'm going to start out by putting on my Central Labor Council hat, and the Central Labor Council in Alameda County represents all industrial sectors. We're looking at teachers and clerical and construction and Teamsters and grocery workers, and workforce housing is, of course, is essential. I mean, our membership does not get the kind of wages to be able to afford housing in Oakland. So for OUSD employees, both certified as in teachers and classified as in staff, workforce housing is essential. And it is a top priority of labor to move affordable housing forward. It is our bread and butter. So having said that, I'm going to speak about the building trades now and what's important to the building trades. And I just do want to say, just with that, you know, we as building trades, we represent close to 100 employees in the school district, all our buildings and grounds folks, and most of them can't afford to live in Oakland. They start at 6 in the morning. We have folks that are getting up at 4 in the morning to make it to work, let alone the environmental impacts of the workforce driving from out of the area to come for these jobs. So it's a quality of life issue as well as just a housing issue. But from the building trades perspective, of course, we represent the folks that are building housing, you know, I think that really the importance for the building trades, I think, is two things. One is we need to ensure that this workforce housing that gets built for workers is not built by exploiting workers themselves. And that is just an irony. If you have no labor standards on these projects, your workforce is going to come from out of area. I don't know. Most of the development downtown is non-union. And if you get up and you go on the job site at 6 in the morning, you'll see all the carpools coming in from the valley, full of workers that have, you know, they share the rides, they're coming in. That's where the workforce is coming from. So, and, you know, if there are no wage standards on these projects, they will get exploited. And just to understand that these projects are not OUSD projects where you have public contract code and prevailing wage. These are leased to developers that'll then have private agreements. And unless you build in the labor standards, you will get workers that are getting exploited on these projects, let alone safety concerns, and also having a voice on the workplace. I think the other really important thing is to make sure that these projects that are being funded by this community is creating opportunities for young people and others to get into the construction sector. Now, we have had a relationship with the school district. We've had a project labor agreement with the school district since 2002 for those projects directly funded by the districts. We have strong provisions for the use of local residents. And over the 20 years we've been doing it, that number has really gone up. Can we be doing better? Yes, we can. Can we also need to come up with mechanisms to focus on minorities, African American, and women, which, given Prop 209, we're prevented from doing, but we have to look at that and do what we can. So we've had a lot of success, and we need to put those same requirements on the developers and the contractors that are building these projects. So you need to create the opportunity for young people to get into the trades. But here's the thing. If you're not increasing the opportunities and the union jobs in the area, you're not going to have opportunities for apprentices. There's no point getting them in a pre-apprenticeship program if there are not union jobs for them to go to. So that is of utmost importance that we need to do. The other irony, though, that we have with regards to these programs really focusing on Oakland residents and specifically disadvantaged residents of color and women is the fact most of them, let's say you're a young person, you're living with your family, your parents, your aunt, you get a great job as an apprentice, you're starting to earn good money. What's the first thing you do? You want to buy a house, you move out of Oakland. That's the first. I mean, we look at the statistics in terms of the folks we're getting in from Oakland, they're all moving out because they can't afford to live here. And I just think of the drain on the communities that's happening with folks that are getting good employment and then moving out is significant. So that's another, again, it's full circle about what we need to do to actually have the housing where the folks that are getting good jobs can then stay in our communities. And finally, I think in terms of how to partner, I mean, like I say, we've had a partnership with the school district around the projects that the school district manages and funds. But we should have, like I say, these requirements through community workforce agreements on these school district properties. And the school district can do that. The school district can say, for developers that are building on this, you need to have these labor standards. And we're a little disappointed. The first projects that went out without labor standards and without those kind of workforce. We can fix that on these future projects. So we're really excited about partnering with everybody here to make that happen.
Thanks, everybody. And it's really great to hear all of your thoughts. I think one of the things we definitely noticed on the board when we were in the process of approving the projects at Shands and Tilden CDC is that, you know, the school district, we're not a developer and we don't have a lot of real estate experience. And so we're struggling to understand, you know, how to do these projects effectively and how to move forward. So we do really need the technical assistance, the expertise of other agencies to help advise us as we move forward on all of these. So I'm going to open it up for questions now from the audience and let, unless do you want to, oh yeah, I'll pass it to Director Brouhard for one comment.
Don't usually do this. I do appreciate, Andreas, the need to have the PLAs on these projects. And I think absolutely the labor standards are important. We're a union town, we're union teachers, we're union clerical workers, we're union custodians, and we can't turn our back on the building trades with that. I also appreciated your comment thinking about young people. And I think one of the things, I know Director Batchelor and I ran into a student who was graduating, and he said he was going into the trades, and you know, he felt kind of like people were like, well, you're not going to college. And he was really excited about going to the trades. And we we're like, yeah, this is great. This is a union job. This is union connections. And I think that, again, for helping to follow through again with affordable housing for our youth who are moving into the trades. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some young people from Fremont High School, graduated from Fremont High, and then actually got into the trades and were working on the construction of the new building at Fremont High. And they were so proud to be part of the construction of their own high school. And then I just also, I was looking back at old photos in Brooklyn. There was this photo of us. We didn't even know each other at the time, but in that meeting you're talking about at the school district, we were just advocates at that point, saying, like, don't do this, you know, and there we both are in that group photo. But yeah, I wanted to pass it over to Mr. Preston Thomas to facilitate the Q&A. And so we can, if people want to either raise their hands on Zoom, if people want to come off of mute, or if you want to put the question in the chat. And then also if people want to raise their hand in the room, obviously, as well.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We do have a couple of people monitoring the chat online, but so they'll text me if there's some questions in there. But Sam, you're also monitoring it as well. So also just, you know, my name is Preston Thomas. I'm the Chief Systems Officer. Also, the enrollment department also reports to me. And the issue of housing is deeply impacting kind of who is entering into our schools, and a lot of families are getting priced out of the area and moving outside of the area because there isn't enough housing for our families. So like, it is kind of a cyclical issue that we're addressing as a district. So I don't know if there's any questions online yet, but if there's any questions in the room, I can bring the mic over to you and you can ask. This is an amazing panel. Did you want to, here we go.
The question is not, it is particular to what was said. But first of all, let me thank all of you. When my wife and I graduated from Bible college 30 years ago, we could have went anywhere in the world for God. We grew up in Oakland, went to schools in Oakland, but we were sent back to Oakland. And when we were sent back to Oakland, I understood that we weren't sent back to a building. I knew that we were sent back to a city. Whatever the issues were, we had to begin to work with people addressing those issues. When we came back, it was in '93. We had a major drug epidemic, and so we began to establish drug rehabilitation programs. We became state licensed, and we addressed that and helped a lot of the churches to start those programs. And until we had so many of the churches that had the programs that we were able to focus on some of the other issues after 20 years of doing the work. I always knew that whatever the priorities were, that's where the resources would go. And just to see that the leadership of the city of Oakland, just right across the board, from the council, from the Oakland Unified School District, from the county, and from the state, all talking about the priority is housing right now. Because it changes, right? At one time it may be this, and another time it may be something else. But right now it's affordable housing, and all of you on that same page is just really encouraging to me. It's hopeful that when we put our minds together, we can do anything. And so I'm really encouraged that the nut will be cracked just by what's sitting here at the table and the people that's in the room. But my question was, I had two questions. One, what was the name of the school that you are in contract with a developer right now? And the second question was to Councilmember Fife. What is the 5K plan?
So I'll start off. So the two school sites that are in contract right now are Edward Shand's Adult School. It's 2455 Church Street. I know that because I worked there for so many years. And then there's a smaller site called the Tilden Child Development Center that's up by, what used to be John Sweat, now Tilden campus. And there's a little parcel at the bottom of Tilden that was just the Tilden preschool. So those are the two sites that OUSD entered into contract with Eagle Environmental in 2021. I'll pass it over to Councilmember Fife.
So the 5K plan was just an opportunity to grab the attention of the public to demonstrate my commitment with the city of Oakland to house the number of people that are currently living unsheltered. So that would be in partnership with our other agencies, and it coordinates all of us under one umbrella to utilize all of the vacant parcels that we have through the school district, through the city of Oakland, through the county of Alameda, and other agencies that I've spoken with too about utilizing not only vacant buildings, but vacant parcels. You've seen several temporary sites go up with the tough sheds over the years, but this is more about creating more permanent housing and more permanent supportive housing for our current unsheltered population. So we've passed a number of ballot initiatives over the last few years to bring in more funds for affordable housing and homeless services. So this is trying to use all of those different ballot measures, the relationships with all of these different municipal agencies to commit to addressing homelessness head on, to make sure that we are not only addressing the population that's currently living on the streets, but addressing stopping the floodgates of more people entering homelessness in the city of Oakland. So this is a countywide problem. It's a regional problem, and we will have additional legislation that'll be in front of voters next year to support, next year, 2024, the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority will put in front of voters a ballot measure for additional dollars to address this problem, but 5K is to address the 5,000 people that are currently living unsheltered on Oakland streets.
What I've learned over the 30 years of being the pastor of Friendship is that the church is a true partner to the things of whatever city it is. And so all of the entities that you mentioned were, public municipalities pretty much, but you do have some local entities that can also partner with you in addressing the issue. And we all are kind of learning, how to do it, how to address these issues. And so just consider working with resources that you have that are not, like your stable resources like churches and other entities.
To that point, Pastor Agee, I have been in conversation with the Assemblywoman's office, Assemblymember Mia Bonta, and philanthropy about supporting a pre-development fund for churches, because a lot of the churches have also lost their congregations to being pushed out of the city of Oakland. And many churches in Oakland, especially in District 3, own their property. And so we're looking at, like you're doing with your property, how to support churches and pastors figure out how to use their land to create the housing that's so desperately needed for the congregation, also for the larger community. So that is also a population that we're bringing into this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question, and we're going to try to see if we can bring a question from Zoom in-house here. Joanna Griffith had a question.
Hi, yes. I'm Joanna Griffith, Director of Real Estate Development for Community Housing Development Corporation. And so my question is around disposition of the vacant school sites. Is there like a streamlined process or a proposed streamlined process for disposing of these properties for development?
So the process that's outlined by state law is we have to do a 7-11 commission, which is a committee of between 7 and 11 people in order to declare property, surplus. And so they make a recommendation to the school board, and then the school board has to act, and that's a lengthy process. And so there are certain kinds of leases, like a joint occupancy lease that the district can enter into, if it's going to be jointly used by, maybe by a developer and the school district, or in the case of, there's one vacant site that we just entered a joint occupancy lease with the city of Oakland because they want to create a library, and the library will be jointly used by the school district and the city. So that's one avenue to go, but I do think that that's why we're in conversations with Assemblymember Bonta's office to see, if the goal is really for workforce or affordable housing, is there a way to streamline? And I don't know if Rowena wants to speak to that. She's good. Okay. Yeah. Or if staff wants to, did I get it?
You did a great job.
Okay, thanks. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Great. I think we have one in the
We have a
room.
question right here.
Thank you. And this actually is a wonderful panel. I like to be in the audience and watch you guys speak just for once. So this is great. Brianna Decker, field rep for Supervisor Keith Carson. I'm also a 5th generation North Oaklander. So this is both personal and professional to me. Wanted to follow up on what you said, Pastor AG, about the importance of churches being in the conversation, especially as it relates to affordable housing, but just in general as education. Let us not forget that a lot of our churches, especially in the Black community, they were home to the CDCs, right? They had the child development centers. And so having that relation to the school district, just that pipeline, just all around, I just wanted to just uplift that, Pastor AG, you saying that. Also, I hear a theme of just everybody's moving out, everybody's moving away. And prior to taking this role as Supervisor Carson's office, I worked in the youth space, had a privilege of working with Ms. Brooklyn, and just the privileges working with our youth. And when I think about re-engaging, and I think about the largest population of just people, I think about millennials. I think about the folks who unfortunately slipped through our systems, didn't graduate. How can we, one, re-engage them, two, create pathways for re-engagement, and also pathways for them to be engaged in building trades, right? How can we create those full circle pathways of, one, re-engaging those who we've unfortunately failed? I think that we all take onus on that. But how can we re-engage them into being healthy, contributing citizens again? I kind of see this as a pathway forward. I know it's a super loaded, multidisciplinary question, but I just wanted to put that out there because I think that's a huge population that can sometimes get overlooked in terms of the space they accumulate is this millennial population. And so again, thank you guys. Wonderful panel.
I think that that's a really great question, and hopefully I answer it effectively, because, just trying to identify as a millennial. So I figure that I fit into that category. But I think I know right now, currently we are talking about, Oakland Unified School District and students and families, right? But when we think about the millennial age, honestly, like that's our community colleges perhaps, right? And so I think that that's kind of another conversation and discussion. I think there was a wonderful documentary that's on Netflix around it has to do with Laney College, and it explores how many of our college age students are living in their car here in Oakland, right? They don't have housing, right? So not only is we're having a discussion around school age children, but now we also need to have a conversation around those that we can engage through our community college system and how we're ensuring they have housing. And I think that the program that Brooklyn has been working on with the CTE Hub will help to kind of identify that. I think it's 16 to 24, but then there's still a gap after that, right? But ultimately, I do think a pathway is through community college.
I'll just say I really appreciate all of these questions thus far, and to kind of connect both of these wonderful questions from the physical audience. Senator Scott Wiener recently authored SB 5, I believe is what it is, which some people are affectionately calling YIGB, which is yes in God's backyard, which is the idea that to streamline the ability to build on faith-based institutions, kind of their parking lots, other things. And what is often left out of that is community colleges. And so that doesn't yet exist for school districts. So again, when we talk about partnering with Assemblymember Bonta, we're exploring that. And I think 2 great opportunities there. So I just wanted to plug that. And then of course, Brooke.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the questions. I want to shout out Faith in Action East Bay as one of our also first supporters, and we definitely can't do this without our faith-based community that has been around for so long. I think we're thinking about this. I appreciate you bringing up, this is a generational issue. It took generations for us to get to this point, and it's going to take thinking about this in generations to get out of it and to address it. And so just to say that also we're going to need to leverage resources from across systems, right? So for example, we have Measure H and the College and Career for All initiative in OUSD, which is wall-to-wall career academies, which we need. We need our young people to be pipelined into careers. And we know that right now, half of our graduates are not going into four-year college, community college, or career pathways right now. That's 800 students a year. This is the population we're looking to serve with this hub. And you have to think about it and be very intentional about it, because it's not just about temporary housing. So we've researched all of the different housing developments and projects for this population in our area. And the challenge is, because it's so unaffordable, that you can house however many young people and they have to stay there like forever in a studio apartment. It's really hard to think about growing a family, which those families would turn around and go to OUSD potentially. So you have to think about this in generations, and I'll just say that we're doing that. The idea is to have transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, which now you get your rental history and your name is on the lease, and now you can go into a market that we actually are looking at TRIO's model for educators and thinking about how do we develop that for the 18 to 24-year-olds so that they can lead. And then not even just that, how do we get them to home ownership after that? Right? Because at that point, the way that we function as a community and as families is we are communal. So a lot of our young people, to your point about the Oakland diaspora, that's what I call it, right? And it's just young people who stand with their family in Antioch, or I live in Antioch, but I come back every day to finish my education here. We can get those young people back, right? And if we can get those young people on their feet in high-paying careers and able to stay here, their families will come back, because that's how they're surviving right now. Right, is the nuclear family is just not as realistic as it used to be with the cost of living. So I'm okay with that personally. I think the nuclear family experiment, has shown us what happens with that. But so I think, in a lot of us, Black and Brown and, others are very communal in that way anyway. So we do need to think about it generationally. And I just wanted to say that because I think when I first talked about the hub, it was about the recidivism and our young people coming home, but it's also prevention. This is those 800 students a year. If they don't find housing and they're not employed, they're at risk for violent crime happening to them and being perpetrators of that. And so if you think about it in an eagle eye way for generations to come, that's how we have to approach this.
And we have 2 more questions, or 3 now. So, yep.
Just real
Go
quick, because I also wanted to say that the 2 of the fastest growing sectors in Oakland are around trade and logistics. Folks forget we have a Port of Oakland here that employs thousands and thousands of folks, and these are good union jobs. And so, and you don't need a high school diploma. You can get right into that job. The same with construction. And I do want to say we have some institutional systems, but we have a very well developed pathway which is based on community-based organizations in Oakland to get into these jobs. And we're looking at, church programs. We're looking at pre-apprenticeship programs like Cypress Mandela and Rising Sun. We're looking at folks like YEP. There is a real network out there where young people, folks that have been kind of left out, left behind, reentry folks, can plug into the system and actually attain these good, what I would call union blue-collar jobs, which is a pathway out of poverty.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from online and just kind of translate it here. And I know part of the answer, Kenya's here as well, is that in the current bond program for OUSD, there isn't any funding for, workforce housing or anything within the current bond, so measure Y. But I'm wondering if any of you have examples of other school districts that might have used the bond program to develop affordable housing or workforce housing within the school. And I don't know if there's any, if that's an unexplored area, but I'm just curious if anybody had examples. And then board directors, I'm going to queue up the other half of the question, which was, you know, our district has about 1/3 of teachers in charter schools. And what's the thought about kind of involving charter school teachers within this conversation? So does anybody have the first half? And then
I don't have specifically which districts have used bonds to finance their work, but off the top of my head, Santa Clara, Palo Alto, San Francisco's in the process right now, and I already said Palo Alto, Daly City are all cities that have either started or like already constructed workforce housing on their site. But again, I don't know if they financed through bonds specifically.
Bobby, did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say San Francisco, I believe, did use part of their GO bond for this process. I'm trying to remember the number. I was trying to look it up. But I want to say it was somewhere around 32 million of a bond, but 20 million going specifically to the construction piece. So GO bonds are being used for purposes like this. I think that that's something we should be looking at for existing GO bonds and future ones, is incorporating that piece. And I think the other piece, and school board member Davis mentioned this, is that it's one thing to do the construction and have the workforce. You also need that technical expertise for that, you know, pre-development work. And that's the hard piece when we're talking about school district and churches. The opportunity is there, the land is there, the workforce is there, but we need that technical expertise that's trusted technical expertise that can really help, you know, move forward these projects too.
I was going to speak to that too, which is actually feels, I'm thinking of our own home and all the repairs we need to do on our home. You know, we have a house, it's a duplex. We co-own it with another family, and we've had it for quite some time, and there's just so many repairs we need to do. And so we're borrowing some money, but we don't want to take on too much debt. There's only so much. And why am I telling you all about my personal life? Because it's exactly the same thing with the Oakland Unified Schools. In the case of Oakland Unified, there's a limit as to how much bond money we're legally allowed to borrow on behalf, and we're very grateful to the voters, but there's actually a legal limit to how much debt we can carry. And the demands from our schools are just way outstrip what we can do. And so to add a housing element within the bond program is just not realistic, because, you know, I'm talking to the PTSA president of Skyline yesterday. You know, there's so many schools that are clamoring for, like, when is it going to be our turn to get the repairs that we urgently need? So as much as I would love to say, yeah, sure, let's add that in, I don't think it's not realistic. And that's why we are asking for the help of community partners, other agencies, nonprofits, anyone we can get to talk to us. And that's why we're so lucky to have all these people that want to talk to us about it. On the charter topic, you know, again, I feel like it's kind of taken on what we can, you know, don't bite off more than you can chew. I think what we saw during the pandemic with the wave of safety issues that we see in Oakland Unified is that charter organizations are like, we need a central district to help us with the problems that we're facing. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what you divorced yourself from when you chose to go as a charter school. So it's, as much as I would love to say, you know, the district is going to serve all the needs of every need of the community, we can't. We can only do so much. And so I think we need to start with our own house and clean up our own house first. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I want to echo what Director Davis said. I think that our first priority is to our Oakland Unified students and families and workforce. And I think that, you know, again, the question of join the district. I think that, yeah, that has to be our priority to be able to do that. So, yeah.
And just clarification for me, yes, I agree with that. My Claremont needs a lot of work. I was actually thinking of the city bond process. Like, I think that the district has a lot of infrastructure repair work that it needs to do on its buildings. And I know this is throwing, you know, there's a lot of money that's already allocated in that process. But I think in the future, when we do city bonds, that should be part of the conversation. And county, yes.
Okay, we have a question right here.
Hi, my name is Paul Davis. I was a teacher in Oakland Unified for 25 years, special ed teacher. And so Brooklyn and her Avengers and what they're doing with the CTE project is really very hopeful and powerful to me. And it's really, I really am glad to see that two of you, because the way I understand what the Avengers were doing is that you're doing an apprenticeship program with Laney. I mean, that's part of the deal, right? I mean, what's the address? 1025. That's near and dear to me, right? Being an Oakland teacher for so many years, and to see that being used for something so important, and the two of you are on the same team talking about this. That's really great. Great. The other thing, I have a question. Didn't we pass some legislation? Does this sound familiar to you guys? Didn't we pass some legislation about, I thought I worked on it, that people who had absentee housing, where they weren't there, they were going to be taxed extra for it? What's happened with that? What's happened with that money?
The mic's right there.
That money is part of the $75 million that I spoke about. That's going to support our housing and our human services department to create services for our unsheltered communities. So we are collecting those taxes. It was the vacant parcel tax, and you did work on that when we were trying to pass it through council. But it is being collected and it is being utilized. Is there not to the degree that I think it should be, and it needs to be tracked a little more. I plan on bringing an informational report to City Council to get an update on how those funds have been used over the last couple years since we passed that measure. But it is being levied. Some people are not very happy with that, but it's still not enough. And quite frankly, we need support from our federal government to fund the things that we're talking about. But in the meantime, I know our small but mighty institutions are trying to do the best that we can to address the crisis, but we need a shift in our federal government on the funds that are allocated for addressing affordability and the construction of affordable housing. But yes, we are collecting those taxes.
And I guess I just wanted to say to that, just for those, if you're on Zoom or just here, making sure that you have an understanding of like how the vacant parcel tax, can be used as well. Like, I think it was really key while I was working for the city of Oakland, how many property owners actually, because the kind of caveat to that is that if they don't want to pay that tax, they can entrust their property to a nonprofit to activate and develop that land. And I think that there's been a lot of really great stories around kind of land use development via that kind of vehicle. So I just want to shout that out. If you're not familiar, look into it, because I think that that's also another great way that we can activate spaces in our communities.
I think one more question. And then...
This question is for the school board directors. Can you all talk about the resolution that you authored on the facilities committee regarding developing vacant properties?
Yeah, so it's a resolution that came actually out of, as Director Brouhard was mentioning earlier, outreach from labor to us earlier this year saying, we really support this and how can we make it a priority? And so it's directing staff to work on kind of cleaning up the language of some different policies around our vacant property and how do we prioritize future use. And it's just a way for us as a board to be able to send a strong message that this is a priority for us. And so it did come to the facilities committee and it passed unanimously, or was recommended unanimously to the full board. So it's going to come to the board, I believe, sometime this month. And so we're hoping, there by discussing it and passing it there, we'll be able to send a strong message that this is something that we want to see progress on as soon as possible. And I wanted to say also that I was just talking to someone who just bought some land because it was sitting vacant for many years and was on San Antonio Park and on the across the street, and he's developing it as housing because the previous owner didn't want to do that. And so that's why they sold it, because they were like, oh, I don't want to pay the vacancy tax. So it's having an impact, I think. Well, on that note, I want to just express tremendous gratitude to everybody on this panel. I think we're really lucky here. And it just fills me with a lot of hope. I was, looking at the faces here and thinking, I think all of us were either elected in 2021 or 2022 or 2023, or, work for people who did, or like new nonprofits. I think Andreas has been doing the work for a lot longer than the rest of us. But it's no, I'm just saying, thank you, Andreas, for handing the baton over us to take this battle forward. I think we're really going to see some change in the near future as a result of some of the initiatives you've heard for tonight. And I don't know if anybody else wanted to say any closing remarks, but I'm just super, super grateful to everybody and feeling very hopeful for the future of Oakland.